Alright, so we're going to talk about provoryotes and eukaryote cells. Now, what we're going to talk a little bit about is the differences between the two. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at provoryotes cells. Now, these two cells provoryote cells have no nucleus, they have no organelles, they have cell walls, they're unicellular, they're simple, and they have circular DNA. Now, what does all of this mean? Now, in provoryote cells, there is no nucleus, no organelles. They do have cell walls. They're unicellular, they're simple, and they're circular DNA. The reason why provoryotes don't have any of the major nucleus in the organelles is because it's a very simple cell. And this cell actually is classified into two different areas. It's classified into bacteria and archaea. Now, as you can see, plants and animals are not in the prokaryote cells. And in plants and animals, they have nucleus and organelles. So you can see the differences. Now, what's the characteristics of bacteria? Bacteria are organisms that begin photosynthesis billions of years ago. And they released oxygen into the atmosphere. Now, the way that you can remember this is photosynthesis is found in plants, and bacteria is found on plants. So that's the way that you can remember that. Now, archaea is also a type of provoryote cell. Now, archaea characteristics are these cells can live in extreme heat with no oxygen and also in acidic conditions. Now, if you think about it, provoryote cells aren't found in plants or animals. So in plants and animals, in both plants and animals, they need oxygen to live. So if you think about it, they're archaic. Archaic means dead. So these are living cells, but they don't need oxygen to live. Okay, so now, what's the second type of cell? It's called eukaryotes. There's four types of eukaryotes. There's plantae, there's animalia, there's fungi, and then there's protista. Now first we're going to look at the plantae. What are the characteristics of a plantae? Well, if you think about it, it's a plant. A plant cell is a cell that is made of cellulose, and they're producers, and they produce photosynthesis. Now, if you think about it, photosynthesis is only found in plants. So that brings us back to this plantae. Now, the second type of eukaryote is an animalia. So an animalia is just the funny name for an animal cell. Now, the characteristic of an animal cell is that it has no cell wall. It has lysosomes, which are proteins. They have flexules, and they're consumers. Okay, so if you think about it, animal cells consume multiple things. Animal cells don't have a cell wall, they have lysosomes, which are proteins, and they consume different things. Now, the third thing is fungi. Now, fungi have a cell wall, and they're made out of chitin, which are decomposers. Now, if you think about it, fungi is actually a decomposer. And fungi, if you think about it, when you have a stomach ache, you have fungus in your stomach, and it's decomposing those bad cells. Now, the fourth type is a protista. So the fourth type of eukaryote is a protista. Now, the protista is unicellular. Okay, it only has one cell, and it's a pretty small eukaryote cell. So these are the different types of eukaryotic cells. You've got plantae, animale, fungi, and protista. And then the two different types of provoryotes are bacteria and archaea. Alright, now we're going to take a look at the differences between provoryotes and eukaryotes. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to have three tables. So we're going to draw three tables out here. Now, this first table we're going to label prokaryote. Then we're going to say the same. Then we're going to name this next one eukaryote. Now, these are all the characteristics in a prokaryote cell. It's less complex, and it has no organelles. Now let's look at the eukaryotic cell. The eukaryotic cell is more complex than your prokaryotic cell. It has organelles, it has a cell wall, and it has a nucleus. Now, if you remember, in plants and animal cells, they have to have nucleuses, but in a non-plant or animal cell, it doesn't need to have a nucleus. And if you remember back to the archaea cell, it doesn't need oxygen, and the nucleus is the main part of a cell that also has oxygen in it. So what are the same things that both a prokaryotic and a eukaryotic cell have? So this is where we're going to say both prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells have a cell membrane and ribosomes. And ribosomes are actually just protein. Alright, so now let's go scroll down a little bit. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between plants and an animal cell. Then we're going to talk a little bit about things that are the same. So over here we're going to name this plant. The middle column is going to be the same. Over here is going to be animal. So in a plant cell, plants have chloroplast. They have a large vacuole. They have a cell wall, and they are rigid. Now, if you think about it, plants are rigid. So that's the way you can remember that a plant has a rigid cell. Chloroplast is only found in plants, and then a large vacuole is where all of the water that a plant needs is contained. Okay, so let's go over to the animal cell. Now, the animal cell has lysosomes, which are proteins. And if you think about it, that's where we get all of our protein, from animals. And we also need proteins to live. Now, an animal cell is eukaryotic and also is flexible. So let's look at some of the things that plants and animal cells have the same of. Plants and animals both have cell membranes, and that's the only thing that's actually the same within plants and animal cells.